Hey guys, welcome again to another edition of Barely Enough. I'm Ryan Maybee. I'm here in the historic exhibit at Rieger Company, and today is the eve of the repeal of Prohibition, the anniversary of the repeal of Prohibition. Tomorrow, December 5th, 2023, will be the 90th. No, 90th. No, I think it's more. Yeah. What? Oh man. All right, let's start that again. Wait, you want me to keep going or start over? All right, tomorrow, December 5th, 19, tomorrow, December 5th, 2023, will be the 90th anniversary of the repeal of Prohibition. And we celebrate that under the phrase of Repeal Day. Every year, I've been doing this for a long time. And there are cities around the country that have big parties. Washington, D.C., for one, is one of the most notable. Tampa Bay, Florida, has a really notable Repeal Day party. It's something that we should all embrace and celebrate. And why? I guess because we shouldn't take for granted the fact that we get to actually have a cocktail, that we get to drink whenever we want. We can go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of booze. We can go to our favorite bar and have a shot and a beer. It wasn't that long ago that we weren't able to do those things. So we're going to kind of dive into all that. We're going to talk about Prohibition, how it happened, and the repeal, and what that means. But it would only be fitting that we do that with a drink. So I'm actually going to start by making myself a Pendergast, which we're going to talk about Tom Pendergast as well. This is kind of a modern, classic, iconic Kansas City cocktail using Kansas City whiskey. I'm not going to go into the details so much of like how to make it because you guys probably already know, or there are plenty of resources on our YouTube channel about how to make this. But I'm just going to make myself one, and if you're so inclined, do so yourself at home, or pour yourself a glass of whiskey or champagne or whatever it is you'd like to celebratory have to drink while we talk about Prohibition. So, the significance of Repeal Day and Prohibition, Prohibition was known as, by the people that started it and really made it a reality, as the noble experiment. It was considered to be a very noble cause because back then, the people that were opposed to alcohol and drinking and everything really, kind of demonized it and felt like it was a horrible thing that was going to lead to the downfall of our country and the family and all that. And so it's kind of known as the noble experiment. Well, obviously that experiment failed, but ironically, even to this day, and again, why we shouldn't take this for granted, is that the Prohibition Party, there's actually the political party known as the Prohibition Party, and it's the largest and longest active third-party political party in the United States. They've been around since 1872, and they're still active to this day. It's pretty easy to find online. You can look it up. They've had presidential candidates in every election since 1872, and even as recent as the 1970s, I want to say the 1976 presidential election, they were on the ballot in most states. So there's still an active movement by the Prohibition Party to once again ban alcohol. So all the more reason for us to celebrate Repeal Day and ensure that that doesn't happen and we don't go back to the Dark Ages, because Prohibition during that time had a really profoundly negative impact on the United States. It led to organized crime. It led to the income tax. It led to all these really terrible things. Eventually, you could argue, played a really huge part in the Great Depression and the crash of the market in 1929. So really just not a good thing. And as I garnish my Pendergast cocktail here, we're going to talk about how all that started. So Prohibition finally became federal law on January 16th, 1919, with the passage of the 18th Amendment and the enforcement of the Volstead Act. The Volstead Act was the act that actually criminalized the sale and distribution of alcohol. The 18th Amendment is the amendment to the Constitution that banned it, but the Volstead Act said if you break it, if you break this law, here's what's going to happen. And that's what criminalized it and what was enforced throughout the 1920s, leading to that rise in organized crime, as I mentioned before. But while that was taking place, there had actually been decades of the temperance movement leading up until that point. The temperance movement had roots way back in the late 17th century and just kept building momentum over time. In fact, in 1881, a full 38 years prior to federal prohibition, the first state in the United States to pass a statewide ban on the sale and distribution of alcohol was the state of Kansas, which obviously is our neighbor here. And Kansas City more or less overlaps between Missouri and Kansas. And they banned alcohol in 1881, kind of during the early days when Kansas City was an Old West town. And that led to the Kansas City, Missouri side of the state line becoming known as the wettest block in the world. So if you're familiar with the West Bottoms neighborhood of Kansas City, where there's actually the state line beginning just south of the Missouri River, where on one side you've got Kansas, the other side you got Missouri, that area right there on the Missouri side would have been known as the wettest block in the world, because they actually advertised back then where Missouri sells alcohol or liquor to Kansas, which is kind of funny. It also had a lot to do with the rise of our company being founded in 1887, more or less a beneficiary of that whole situation, becoming the largest mail order whiskey house in the US right in that part of town, and more or less benefiting from that. But it just kind of goes to show how long this had been in process prior to the federal law being passed in 1919. And this was happening all across the country. It wasn't just in Kansas. It wasn't just in the Midwest or in the South or in the Bible Belt, so to speak. It was really happening everywhere. And before it became federal law with the 18th Amendment, I think you had to have like 36 or 38 states ratify it before it became federal law. These initiatives went up to vote in every single state, and it happened in Missouri even. And we have a sample ballot here from, I think, 1910 that we acquired recently. We're going to put up here in our historic exhibit, where the question went to voters: do we ban the sale of alcohol or not? This sample ballot that we have, actually, if you read it really carefully, this would have been a poster of a sample ballot ahead of the election, and pretty obvious that the purpose behind this poster was to dissuade people from voting for prohibition. And fortunately, that did not happen in Missouri. It did not pass, and it probably went up for a vote multiple years and got shot down, but nonetheless, it became federal law. But it just kind of goes to show that this is a coordinated effort between states around the country that eventually led to just sort of an overwhelming mass of states that did pass prohibition on alcohol, which led to that federal law and to the noble experiment that lasted throughout the 1920s and into the 1930s. So the question is, what happened here in Kansas City? And I think that's a really fun thing to kind of look at, because Kansas City is unique for a lot of things. We're known for a lot of things. This cocktail here that I'm drinking, the Pendergast, is named after Boss Tom Pendergast, who is notable for his time in Kansas City during the 1920s and 1930s during Prohibition. He was known as Boss Tom, but he was never an elected official. He was not mayor. He was not a politician. He was a businessman. And he held court at a building on Main Street in 1908, Maine, called the Jackson County Democratic Club, which is where he ran his operation. And more or less, he had a lot more power and a lot more sway over what happened in Kansas City than any elected officials or law enforcement or anything like that. It's also believed that he went so far as to half of the Kansas City Police Department, he pulled out Leavenworth from criminals and appointed them as KCPD officers, and they were all kind of under his thumb. Not only that, but he also appointed a lot of the judges during that time, including most notably Harry S. Truman. So prior to Harry Truman starting his political career, he actually owned a haberdashery at 12th and Baltimore in downtown Kansas City. So he sold all of the kind of movers and shakers and influencers in Kansas City, judges and attorneys and, powerful men like that. He sold them their coats and hats and suits and things like that. And he was a very charismatic guy. And Pendergast realized that he could really use him. And so he appointed him a circuit court judge. And so during that time of Prohibition in Kansas City, with that power that's being kind of enforced by Tom Pendergast, there really wasn't prohibition in Kansas City. In fact, Kansas City was the only major city in the United States that during that 14-year period did not have a single felony conviction for the sale or distribution of alcohol. The way this would work is that the federal agents would come in from DC. They would go bust a speakeasy or maybe a bootlegger. They'd call the Kansas City Star. They'd have someone come out with a camera. They'd take photographs, busting the bad guys, breaking bottles or barrels in the street. At that point, it was outside of their jurisdiction. They had to hand them over to local authorities and go back to DC. Once they got handed over to the local court system with all those judges appointed by Pendergast, the charges were dropped and they were released. They went right back to work. And so in a large way, there wasn't even a speakeasy type culture in Kansas City because bars and clubs operated right out in the open. This was so pervasive that, there's this phrase that jazz was born in New Orleans, but it grew up in Kansas City. In a large part, that's really, really true because it led to the rise of Kansas City jazz. All these great musicians realized that, Kansas City was the place to be, someplace that they could go and practice their art form and party and play in clubs and not get in trouble, and people could come out and have a good time. So guys like Count Basie, which is a big band leader at the Hey Hey Club, Lester Young, Benny Moten, this all led to the emergence of a whole new innovative era of jazz known as bebop, which was founded here in Kansas City, and then eventually maybe arguably the most famous bebop jazz musician of all time, Charlie Parker, is from here in Kansas City. The Hey Hey Club is a notable place because it was one of those clubs that existed during that time period that Count Basie was known for playing at, Lester Young was known for playing at, and it eventually shut down years later, but we've resurrected it here in the basement of J. Rieger and Company. We've got a new modern idea of the Hey Hey Club. And it's a place that kind of pays tribute to that history and that culture in Kansas City. So all these things kind of came together and speak to, why Kansas City is special during Prohibition and why we should be celebrating Repeal Day. So, tomorrow being the 90th anniversary of the repeal of Prohibition is no small thing. It's something that I think we can all raise a glass to and enjoy. And it's even had a greater impact if you kind of think about, that history back then, but look at what it's done right now. If you talk about today's culture in bars, the word speakeasy has taken on a whole new life and a whole new meaning where it's become a genre of bar in itself. And it doesn't have quite the same meaning that it did back then. Back then, it meant an illicit place where you could drink in secret and get away with it. The phrase itself is believed to have been derived from the fact that you'd have to speak in hushed tones about it so as to not attract too much attention and get the place busted. Or maybe it was in a neighborhood where you didn't want to be too loud and too rowdy to upset the neighbors so that they didn't turn you in. Today, it doesn't have quite that same meaning, but it does mean a reverence for the past, and it does have a reference to that historic aspect of drinking culture and bar culture. Speaking about that, maybe the first of the modern day speakeasies here in Kansas City anyway was My Bar Manifesto, which we opened back in April of 2009 in the basement of the old Rieger Hotel. We opened that on April 10th, 2009. And, while it's completely legal to do all these things today, there's some fun in, creating an escapist experience for your guests to, have this kind of adventure when coming to your bar. My whole idea for Manifesto when I first opened it was I wanted to give my guests an experience that they would remember and they would talk about before they ever walked in the front door. I wanted them to remember the moment that they heard about it or got that business card with that number and texted that phone number, and then found out that they got a reservation, that they're headed there, and then finding the place without a sign, walking down a dark alley past a dumpster and an unmarked door and a loading dock. All that sounds crazy and weird, and it sounds to some extent, the anti of what you would want to be doing as a business owner, but it created this real sense of a memorable experience within people. I wanted people to have this almost like butterflies in their stomach sense of anxiety, like they're doing something wrong. Because once you walk through that door, once you get there and then you walk through that door, once it changes and it transforms into this beautiful, dark, candlelit space with just the right music and ambiance and the right smells of fresh herbs and citrus and drinks and the sound of, ice shaking in the cocktail shaker and, bartenders well dressed and all those things. It's so dramatic. It's like the scene in The Wizard of Oz that goes from black and white to color, and you just don't forget that. And that was part of the experience that I wanted to create for guests with Manifesto. And it's had a lasting impact. Even though Manifesto isn't there today, we're here. And we have Jay Rieger, and we've got the Hey Hey Club in the basement, which pays tribute to that. And the modern day speakeasy is now something that everybody is familiar with and talks about. And there are quite a few of them out there. So seek them out. It's fun. Go out, find a new hidden spot that you haven't been to before and have a crazy cocktail that you might not otherwise order. It's a lot of fun. Either way, whatever you're going to be doing, celebrate Repeal Day. Have a drink, raise a glass to those who that may not have been able to drink during the dark ages of the Noble experiment. And let's not repeat that messed up history. I think that's all I've got, unless we have any questions. What happened to bars and restaurants during Prohibition? Well, most of them were shut down. Most of anything operating openly on the street were shut down. Distilleries were certainly shut down. Jay Rieger and Company was largely was one of the biggest mail order whiskey houses in the United States, and we immediately went out of business. What happened to all the alcohol? It got destroyed. There's an endless archive of photos online of barrels being dumped in the street and bottles being broken in the street and people, being hauled away in handcuffs just for making whiskey. And everything had to go underground. In fact, and now we're going to go down a little bit of a different tangent here, but the cocktail is an American innovation. We created the cocktail here in the mid 1800s. We perfected it and we made it something beautiful. We made it an art form and we created an entire industry out of it. And we made bartenders professionals. We elevated bartenders to the level of doctors and lawyers back then. I mean, they were revered and respected individuals in the community. But once Prohibition happened, they couldn't work in the United States. And so they had to leave. They went to Cuba, they went to Paris, they went to London. And some of those bars then became some of the most important in the world and published some of the most meaningful books. So like the Savoy Cocktail book from London was published by Harry Craddock. There's Harry's New York Bar in Paris, run by an American bartender that defected during Prohibition. This happened everywhere around the world. So the industry suffered significantly. Everything went underground. There was, like I said, here in Kansas City, a little bit different scene where people could blatantly, flaunt their refusal to follow the law and got away with it. But largely, on a national level, that did not happen. It was dismal and bleak for sure. I think we got another one. What else happened on December 5th? Really, really famous Kansas Cityan was born on December 5th, Walt Disney. You've all heard of him. I'm not joking. It is Walt Disney's birthday tomorrow, but it's also mine. So this is my birthday celebration. And what else do we have? So with that, you what? Okay. Hit play. All right.
Happy birthday, Ryan Maybee. Thanks for being a pretty darn good boss all these years. And thanks for being a better friend. I love ya.
I don't know. Who do I turn
Hi, Ryan. Happy birthday, my young friend. Miss you.
Anyways, happy birthday, Ryan.
Of course,
Oh,
Ryan
nice.
Maybee was born on Repeal Day, right? How could he have been born any other day with as much as he's doing in the world of spirits? Anyways, happy birthday, Ryan, one of my best friends in the world. Happy birthday, dude.
Oh, Tom.
Happy birthday, Ryan Maybee. Thanks for being a pretty darn good boss all these years. And thanks for being a better friend. Love ya.
Hi, Ryan. Happy birthday, my young friend. Miss you a lot. Cheers.
We just wanted to pop in and
Wow.
tell you a very, very, very happy
Danny's birthday, too.
We love you.
Hey Ryan, what's up, man? It's Danny back here in Chicago. I'm hoping you have a great birthday and tell you thanks for everything you've done for the liquor industry, the bar industry, and just being a good old dude.
Hey Ryan, happy
way.
birthday, buddy. 46 isn't that old.
Happy birthday, you filthy animal.
Oh,
Hey
man.
Ryan, just wanted to wish you the happiest of birthdays from myself and Mr. Jackson. Hope you have a gorgeous day and can't wait to raise a glass with you in person, my friend. Cheers.
From me and everybody here at the front desk and the front of the house here at J. Rieger, happy birthday. The world is a much better place with you in it. Cheers, man. Happy birthday.
Ryan Maybee, love you, brother. Happy birthday, my friend.
Oh, man.
Hey Ryan, you little stud muffin. Happy birthday.
That was great. Yeah. Thank you for that. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. That was amazing. Appreciate it. All right. Hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll be back here next year. See you then. Barely enough.